Whether you have a stock Fox body or even one that makes a lot of horsepower, a lot of what I'm gonna go over in this video has a lot of application. As you guys know, we've been beating the absolute shit out of our white car this year, stick shift racing with no prep. And there's some things we need to go over, as I've caught a couple things recently before our last race when I did a nut and bolt check. But at the same time, I'm gonna go through some of the stock stuff in your Fox body, whether you daily drive it, whether you drive it recreationally, drive it to car shows, or even just go to the track like I do and beat the snot out of it. Now let's get the car in the shop. We got a nut and bolt check we gotta do because we got a little bit of testing we're gonna do tonight at the track. Let's get started. Go ahead and check this antifreeze right where I want it. No air. And it's high, it's right up its level it needs to be. I got a couple things that at my last nut and bolt check, I noticed that my my brake fluid was a little bit low. I don't really know why. We gotta check that, we gotta check the oil. We're gonna be changing oil anyways. Bill had an issue last time and we checked this bracket, it's nice and tight. But I'm happy that the antifreeze didn't really move. I don't have any air in my radiator. So that makes me happy, even though the head gasket's not here yet. They had to make it again, so. See, last time I did an oil change in this, one thing I did notice that I didn't really pay attention. I just chalked it up to not having enough oil in other locations like the oil filter. But that little notch I put on here, you can tell it was like it's probably half a quart high. Bing. No shot play, we're good. So before we go up on a lift, there's a couple things, like I said, I'm going to address today. I got, when I checked my last nut and bolt check, I had an issue with one of my calipers. We're also going to go through some of the pieces when we go up on the lift that you're going to want to pay attention to, because even on a stock Fox body, I'm going to point some things out. Nut and bolt checks are something that you should be doing every week, especially if you're racing competitively and, you know, beating the shit out of your car. Whether it's 1/8 mile, 1/4 mile, or even at the, you know, drifting it, doesn't matter. It should go up on a lift or up on jack stands and you should check your shit. So I'm gonna show you guys some areas to look for. Nut and bolt checks are a safety thing, so you can be safe for the guys that you race with, the guys that you drive next to, or even people that are driving down the street next to you. Yeah, stripper glitter and landscaping. Hold on, let me see this. This is one of my bolt checks. Checking hub, see if the wheel moves. Because if there was a bad wheel bearing or any sort of issue with this hub assembly, this wheel would move without the weight on it. But yeah, this is a traction. I'm going to show you one of the main things that I was having an issue with earlier. And you can see here, look at this. Starting to leak some more. Does it bother me? Yes. Does it need to be fixed? Yes. The other side should be good. It looks like the other side actually sealed because this was actually not correct. So what we're going to do here today is we're probably going to end up, not on camera, but we're probably going to end up loosening this up, and I'm going to probably put some, you know, figure out if, you know, why this is leaking here. But you can see there's an issue. So another thing on a nut and bolt check, checking your ball joints, see if they're torn. Like I said, you know, these are a little bit bound up because of the way my suspension travels, but you know, you got to make sure that, you know, things are tight and that the hub and the wheel isn't messing around. Front tie rod assembly, obviously the front tie rod, this is a spherical, but on the factory one, they have a boot here as well, just like you do with your ball joint. So you got to check this to make sure this isn't wobbling around, and make sure that your boot up here isn't ripped. You know, your rack gets ripped and it starts to leak. And this is a manual rack, but you know, you got to watch for you know, power steering lines leaking and such. With the power steering, I don't have to worry about it. So on a factory Fox body, I mean, you can see here I have little tabs welded. I keep this as a solid mount, like motor mount, but this is actually one of the issues on a factory stock Fox body. This motor mount gets torn real bad. There's a big rubber block on a factory stock body that I guarantee you is ripped and torn at that point. Did want to make application to factory stuff that you need to look for in a nut and bolt check. Also with the stock Fox body, you want to look at the harmonic balancer and the rubber coming out of the harmonic balancer, because that's a big issue with those at this age. You know, you're talking about a car that's now 35 years old, and harmonic balancer is definitely something that you're going to want to swap out or start planning to swap out, even if you haven't messed with it yet. Obviously, you see here aftermarket, I have sphericals. You know, your control arms being stock control arms with your ball joints. This bushing in here gets real dry rotted at this age, and it's all tore up. So it's one check you're going to want to make your stock Fox body on the control arm bushings on both sides where they mount to the K member. You know, going back to the rack real quick, there was issues here. There'd probably be issues here with this rack bolt and this bushing in most Fox, you know, most stock Fox bodies at this point if they haven't been messed with. Since we have already checked these last week, I'm not going to go back over them as far as the tie rod ends and my control arm sphericals and my rack and stuff like that. But I did want to talk about my steering rack. This thing right here is a rack joint. Guys, if you could replace this with a solid steering, we always are checking our solid steering to make sure that there's nothing, you know, loose or coming. You know, we should go through it nut and bolt check, but it looks like nothing's actually coming loose, so we'll be okay. But this thing right here, you know, just get rid of it. I've seen this completely ruin cars and just tear off and they go to hit a wall. This is a rack joint, and if you have the money to go ahead and put the solid one in, just go ahead and do that, even if you have a stock Fox body. So moving on, like I said, I'm trying to make application between race car, street car, strip car, and just factory stuff to look for. On a race car, stuff like this, you're looking for binding up of the cable. You can see I made like little adjustments here. I kind of made this up right here. Don't mind my oil pan likes to leak, so we got a whole bunch of gasket sealer here. But rear main seal, obviously coming through, gets leaky. This one doesn't leak. You know, they usually leak right here from the back. You know, you start to get a little bit of tear and torque from, you can see how my polyurethane bushing here has seen better days. You also want to be looking at the bushings here. I've beat the absolute snot out of this Stifler's cross member because I literally wore it out, and that's a good problem to have for a business. See how this is? See how it's starting to tweak here? So these bushings are all getting beat up from the too much torque in the car, so that's something I'm going to have to replace. But this, you wouldn't find this, you know, eventually I'm going to bend this, but this is why you nut and bolt check, because you try to prevent dumb shit like this happening. But we also have a spare T56 swap that came out of the black car. What we're gonna end up doing here, all the blocks are nice and straight, and this cross member is barely used. I think it's only got like a couple 100 miles on it. We're gonna take the polyurethane off the other T56 I have spare here, and I'm gonna put this cross member on. We'll get that stuff replaced for that swap, and we'll keep moving on. But continuing down the body here underneath the car, U-joints, big deal. You know, you usually can move the drive shaft around and see if the U-joints are starting to go bad. They usually need to be greased. You can see I'm leaking from the backside of my yoke. I actually wore this yoke out as well. Surprise, right? We're gonna have to fix this issue, but it's not too bad because it doesn't really leak on the ground. It just kind of spins up on the body. But I got to get a new yoke from Hanlon Motorsports to, and that's kind of one of those 31 spline forged ones. Stock Fox bodies, especially with T5s, your yoke likes to twist quite a bit. The splines back here, I've actually had a handful of bent ones. They won't even go all the way in because they're bent on the splines. This is very dangerous because it could flip your car over. So I highly suggest you running a Stifler's drive shaft loop, because to be honest with you, it could save your life one day, because this car will actually catapult up, flip the car over. It really would. It's just a big pole vault at that point. I'm not really going to get into the exhaust portion of it. You know, you just want to look for leaks, and one way to tell for exhaust leaks is just seeing like water drip from where the V-bands and or the couplers are at on your exhaust, but you can tell they're not sealing. But check your drive shaft for any major dings and dents. You can spin it over. I mean, guys, this stuff literally takes 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes when you got it sitting up on your stands, and most of the time you'll overlook some of the dumbest shit and you'll be like, wow, I didn't realize it was that bad. Probably one of the major things is these bolts like to come loose back here. These 4 flanged 12mm bolts that attach the drive shaft to the drive shaft flange. Definitely want to check your U-joint for damage, and you want to check to make sure your clips are in. My buddy Danny Watts actually had one of these shoot through the floor on his yellow Cobra. He was very lucky it didn't hit him. Continuing with the bolt check, if you start to get a lot of seepage here from the gear lube, obviously your seal's leaking or your pinion's coming loose. A lot of stuff that goes on underneath of here, so you definitely want to check that. Same thing for back here with the 8.8 diff. You know, when you start getting leaks around here, obviously your gasket's done give up or whatever. But that's going to lead me into one of the things that we're going to be talking about on the black car. I want to check it. We're going to revisit it here in a second. He actually found something that I didn't see, so that's going to force me to go through this. I didn't see this. That's the little stuff that's important. So I appreciate him for actually being in the wrong place at the right time. I did want to mention, and I mentioned before, the motor mounts. What we like to do every week is we like to go through and just kind of spray the car down with brake cleaner and get some of the oils and stuff that might have came off of it. But if you look at your oil pan, it should be pretty level with your K-member, especially you guys that run these aftermarket K-members. That'll tell you if your motor mount's starting to twist or starting to move. So I did want to mention that earlier in the video, and I forgot to. Back here, you guys know I have an aftermarket fuel system. What I'm gonna end up doing is making sure that none of these are actually loose. I just went through this, so I know this is good to go, but on a stock Fox body, one of the things you wanna look for is you got a vacuum that up top of this tank can get pinched. And the problem is that'll wreak havoc on your pump, because you got to have proper vacuum to your tank. It'll literally ruin your pump. Another thing on the stock Fox bodies, like I said, we just replaced all of our filters recently here on our system. Filter is always a common clog issue with these stock Fox body lines. So it's like a $5, $8, $10 part at the part store, and it's definitely something that you want to look at. But outside of that, guys, you know, Cousin Paul is checking the 1212s here on our drive shaft to make sure. He's only going to check a couple to make sure they're tight. We're gonna go through, and you can see I put new 10.9 axle, upper and lower control arms. I got to check my sphericals, my heim joints, literally anything that could come loose that could really kind of cause an issue or safety. Also, the brake lines, make sure the fittings aren't leaking or wet on both the caliper and the back of the axle. All Cousin Paul here is doing is just, you know, we just go through and check a couple of the nuts, make sure they're not loose or look like they're coming loose. Anti-roll bar, guys, make sure you're checking joints. You could easily bend these stabilizer bars quite a bit, to be honest with you. Last but not least, the issue at hand that I was going to tell you about with the black car. One of the major reasons why we haven't been driving the black car outside of the turbo issues, or actually taking it to the track and showing you guys a little bit of footage, is the fact that we actually bent the axle tube itself. This is all tigged and all welded, and then we braced it up, which basically is something that's should be done on all Fox bodies at this point, including but not limited to stock ones. Now, the stock Fox body, you could get away with some of this, you know, 300, 400, 500 horsepower, but you do a lot of burnouts and do a lot of driving and hard driving, this tube is gonna leak. And that's exactly what's going on with the black car right now that we're gonna be showing you here on the channel very soon. On top of that, you wanna make sure your vacuum is open and breathing, because this is, like I said, with the tank and the fuel pump, this will wreak havoc on your wheel seals and your wheel bearings over in the end. If you start to see condensation over here, now I know this is a rear disc, but imagine it's a rear drum. If you start to see condensation over here, you probably got a leaky master cylinder and or leaky axle seal. That could be very dangerous. Like I said, I'm talking a lot about application between what I got going on here and what you guys have in your cars, some of the modifications that you need to check out. But again, every race, when we come back from the track, we nut and bolt check everything to make sure that, you know, everything's good. We do the nut and bolt check on the engine. We always check belts. At this point, we pretty much check all the brackets, because as you know, my turbo decides it likes to eat belts. I hope you guys got a lot of, I know this is kind of a boring video. It's engaging. If you got any questions or concerns about what I do here, what I do there, hit me up in the comments below. If I missed something, that's always kind of a maintenance thing, which I'm sure I did. There's so many different things on this car that can hold you up, especially being 35 years old. Probably high time that those cars start to get their maintenance. I hope you guys find this video informative. I got some things I'm going to show you on the black car because it's a little less modified, but I try to make an application here on the channel for you, as I'm always trying to do a little bit of something on the Fox body genre. But this goes for any car, not just Fox bodies. But you guys enjoyed the video, leave me a comment below, let me know what you think. Leave me a thumbs up if you liked it. Comment below. Like I said, add to the video. People read comments, so add to the video. We got a join button below if you want to give something back to the channel. It helps us come and see you subscribers and members at events. So I appreciate everybody. See you soon in the next video. Thanks for watching.